So budget and finance education session is continuing. We took a brief break and we're back. And we are down to executive branch.
Here we go. All right, so executive branch shows an increase of 130,000. That actually is a net reduction of 2 positions. There's some movement here in terms of various positions that's driven largely by an expiration of an HHS grant the end of June in the community health portion of the executive branch. And so because of that, we have some portion of our community health team not continuing, and then we have some other portion of it continuing, but via different funding mechanisms that some of which we've talked about. And so that's just some of the movement that's happening here. So that's really the gist of this. And I think what's important to know is that the Community Safety and Gun Violence Prevention Program is continuing as well. Again, some of that being funded through the ARP dollars that Kevin hit on just before the break.
So the department will continue, however, some of its positions are funded for only 1 more year.
Yes, and some of its positions are going away.
Okay.
Yes. Yep, that's right.
Any questions?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm late. How many employees up there again? 45?
45 authorized positions in the executive branch. So this includes mayor's office, it includes community health, it includes FJC.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you did say the employees knew prior to becoming employed that their job
For
was.
the grant, yeah. So if you're a grant funded, is that what you're asking?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So if you're a grant funded employee, you're told when you're hired that this is a grant funded position, and so if the grant funding goes away, that your position will not continue. So.
That includes FJC, Family Justice Center, it's under executive branch?
Yes.
Would there not be like a agency? Not that I don't love Family Justice Center, because I do. I'm just saying.
It is not. It is underneath the executive branch.
Is there a reason why, or, I don't want to conflict of interest nobody, but, is there a reason why that's under there?
I'm sure there's history there.
I can speak to it,
Yeah, sure.
being here during the reorganization. So the Family Justice Center, we felt like was in alignment with the community health team. And so we decided to bring them under community health to have that kind of streamline there. I know in years past, in previous administrations, there has been a history of certain areas maybe would be funded out of a different department, and so we just felt it would be easier to streamline, have community health and FJC in the same area. But they are all city employees. It is not an agency in any way.
Okay, okay.
So let me just ask one other question, because that's something we've been grappling with for a while. Why, and I know where her question is coming from, why is it not either an agency or a department with all of that stuff under it?
Yeah, like a quasi, like a library or something, I
Yeah.
guess, that would be the.
What was the thinking?
I wasn't here when the decision was made, but and I don't know the full history there. But for each of the decisions around whether it's a department, an office, an agency, a quasi-agency.
Well,
It has
call
to
it
do
the
with-
Department of Health. I don't care what you call it.
Sure.
But there's a Department of Health. And why would the Family Justice Center with its expanse be under that as opposed to it being
Separate.
its campus, its own campus? And all those stuff not, under's a bad word, but included in there. Cause all their offices are there and everything. I was just trying to figure out why that is. We have a coordinated community effort that meets all the time with that campus out there. So, yeah, it seems like it would be more cost effective. That's the only thing I'm saying.
Well, I think the administration's perspective is that, sorry, Ryan, let me.
That's
jump in.
great, yeah. Good.
The FJC, because they are essentially offering mental health services. And so they are effectively offering some sort of health services, and so therefore, they should be under the Office of Community Health once it was established. Keep in mind, the Office of Community Health was only established in 2021 when the Kelly administration came into office because we were successful at winning the HHS grant. And so when we created that Office of Community Health, the FJC under the Burke administration kind of lived out on its own. We brought it under the Office of Community Health because of the relationship to health services.
My last question, and it's completely city funded, correct? There's no
No,
county dollars?
no,
I mean, not completely, but like, well, I guess more
We
government
just
funded.
got county dollars,
Oh,
this last year, but most of its funding is on federal
right,
grants.
okay.
But it is also city funded.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
The building is still the same.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, no jab to the, of course,
What
Family
I'm saying
Justice
is
Center, I
it's a
just
city
wanna know what's going
building,
on.
right?
Sure.
I'm saying it poorly. It's a city building.
Yes.
So why aren't all of the services emanating from the city building? And it doesn't just do mental health
No,
services.
no, and I'm not saying,
I mean, there's some wrong stuff there.
sure, I'm not saying that's the only
So-
focus, but that is one of the focuses. And so, but I do think that we are open to the idea of maybe consolidating probably some services under the same roof as the family justice.
Yeah, well, they were supposed to be. And I just wondered why it didn't happen.
I think we're certainly open to resisting that conversation.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Anything else on the executive branch? Okay. Finance, administration. So here, finance is showing a decrease of about $168,000. Reduction of 4 positions is really what makes up most of that decrease. 1 vacant business systems analyst position, and also 3 positions through a reduction in force in city court. I mentioned this during my budget presentation last week. I can get into a little bit more detail here if I need to, but again, this is really being responsive to city council and looking at the work volume that has come across in terms of violations to city court since 2018, being down roughly 46% since 2018. This reduction of 3 puts the staff of around 14 employees down to 11. And so if you take out the 1 person at the top, there's 13 people doing the hands-on work. And so going from 13 people doing hands-on work to 10 people doing hands-on work, that's about a 23% reduction. And so in that way, it's about half of the demand reduction, if that makes sense. And we think that that is an appropriate path in this case, because there's opportunity there as we talk about enforcement and continuing to lean in on the enforcement side. We don't want to get too aggressive in terms of streamlining here with our city court clerk's office and not be able to, process things in the city court clerk's office That said, there are certainly opportunities around process, around digitization, et cetera, that we need to get into. And so, you know, as we get into the coming months, look for there to be opportunity in those spaces here as well. So that's kind of a high-level summary in terms of how we've approached this budget with the city court clerk.
So the three, those are actually three people that would be losing their job. That's not attrition, correct?
That's correct.
Do they have an opportunity, is there opportunity in other positions through the city to apply and be rehired, I guess, at another
Yeah, so
position?
we are following the same process as we did last year. So they have the opportunity to apply for open positions, and we'll support them through that process. What I would say is, my understanding is Anthony has been very, I'll say on the front foot in terms of trying to help them find placement, and that there's good chances of them finding placement. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I had a question about the grants and opportunities team. I know they do a great job, like a phenomenal job. We have just in a simple report, just what they've done over the past few years as far as how much they've brought into the city through grants.
Absolutely.
That
Yeah,
is like
that's a great story.
Chelsea and
Yeah,
does a,
that's a great story to tell.
Yes, it is.
Happy to tell that story.
yes, I don't think we talk about it enough, but they do a amazing job at that. So just wanted to just see that, and I think it's good to highlight, you know, that, yeah, it's taxpayer dollars, but also they work really hard to bring funding from outside of the city into our city.
Sure.
Do you want that?
It could
You
just be
want
like
a report?
yeah, just a quick report. It ain't got to be super deep. Just showing what they've done maybe over the past 2 or 3 years in regards to
What,
grant
what
funding.
we talked about doing, at our break was making a list of all these reports that you guys want. And then at the third session, following up with these.
Okay.
So we may be moving some things up. I mean, this is all great stuff.
Okay.
So Ryan and I spoke about that. So next week, we're gonna be finishing up with the departments per se. We may be moving some other stuff up. And then that third session,
It's really dope.
really hit on all the stuff that you all have said you wanna hear about and talk about in depth,
Okay.
if that works.
That works.
Okay,
That
good,
works.
thank you.
Thank you.
The other thing I failed to mention here is that, you know, we're gonna take some of the savings here and, invest it in additional AHO hours, so.
Oh, all right.
So we had, and I think I hit that, in a later slide, but I just wanted to mention that as well.
Anything else?
Is
Go
the
ahead.
AHO something that we will talk about at some point
It's actually
later?
in the public works slide,
Okay,
where, well, I mean.
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
under public works.
public work,
Yeah. See where it says LDO?
okay.
Number 2 under there, LDO, Public Hearing Officer.
Oh, okay. I didn't see
Yeah,
that.
it's here.
Okay. I didn't read over that far.
All right, moving on. Human resources. Human resources shows an increase of $500,000. That looks more exciting than it is. That is because we are moving an insurance plan from, where was that? That was in facilities and public works. And we're moving that over to HR in the risk management area. It's the building and content insurance. And so that's really the bulk of that $500,000 increase. So no net new positions. There was a -1 and a +1 here for positions, but no real excitement. Anything on HR? All right. Community development. Community development shows a net of $84,000. That's a net reduction of 4 positions. So that brings them to 121 authorized positions. And that, some of what's happening there with the net reduction of 4 is, and maybe this is just a helpful information for y'all, we instituted a policy when folks are trying to swap a position for another position, it has to be at least budget neutral now. And so you can't take a part-time position and swap it for a full-time position and say, oh, we've got enough attrition this year to pay for that. No. It has to pay for itself on an ongoing basis. And so some of what they've done here is they've taken a couple part-time positions and eliminated those to make one full-time position, for example. And so oftentimes that actually results in a net savings for the city budget overall. So just a little bit of a boring bureaucracy thing for you guys, but actually a smart budgeting. There is an elimination of one leadership support position here, program manager position. There was a retirement, and so that position is being eliminated. And there's also some additional space costs from offices at the Midtown campus.
So there were a number of questions around the community centers,
Okay.
family empowerment, that whole area. Anything you all have now?
Just a quick update on where y'all are with hiring an administrator for.
Yeah.
What stage are you in?
Sure. We got through first round interviews and we're moving into finalist interviews.
You have like a tentative when y'all potentially be done?
As soon as possible.
Thank you. The summer camp is getting ready to start, and I know that, I need to have some things going on. And I guess just as a regular center question, like, will the pools be open? Do we have enough lifeguards? Like, just a general.
Sure. We want all the pools to be open, full hours. To your point, the challenge is hiring lifeguards, and I don't have the latest stats on that, but I know that it was a challenge last summer. It's a challenge nationwide. It's not just a challenge here in Chattanooga. We can get an update for you in terms of where the hiring is on that. But
Okay.
yeah.
So will there be like restructuring of that with a new director or how does that work?
We will certainly take the input of the new administrator into account, but
All community centers.
I wouldn't expect any restructuring for this coming year. It would be in the future budget if there was any restructuring.
So question, as I'm looking at page B105 of this operational budget, I want to understand what these line items are. So, North Chattanooga, or Francis B. Wyatt is the only community center in District 2. And am I understanding that this line is that the entire budget for the center is $29,000 for the entire year? That's to cover all the programming at the center? I assume that number does not include the staffing.
That's correct. It does not include
This is
staffing.
just the money for the whole center.
I believe those are programming dollars.
Okay, and then as I look up here a little higher, the community development, public communication, we've got $100,000 in that line item of the budget. Is that to communicate programming for the entirety of the community development or the community center
Right. Yes,
work?
that's right.
Okay.
That's to advertise summer camp, that's to advertise OFE programs, yeah, everything.
Brian, we list, Cromwell in our list. Will they be operational this time?
Yes, and actually that's on, future considerations for y'all,
Okay.
this afternoon, well, I guess it's not technically, but anyway, it's on future considerations, for the amended lease. And, that new amended lease, allows Cromwell to continue operation, but with more flexibility in terms of the staffing.
Okay.
So that, we can continue to meet the needs of the residents there, but also, be more flexible in our staffing.
Okay.
Yeah. Other questions?
All the other community center things satisfied? Family empowerment satisfied? Yes,
Brian,
ma'am.
do you know if we will be, placing metal detectors at our community centers due to the event just recently happened at Brainerd? What would prevent that from happening again or in any other site?
That's a good question. I would say there's no active plans for that. You can see that the device we just installed here, requires staffing. And so I think it's more than a notion to go down that path. So, we can definitely have conversation about that, but there's no active plans, to go down that path.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
All right,
Police.
police. All right, police shows, an increase of almost $1.7 million. It shows an addition of 21 authorized positions. That includes 23 police officers. And again, I would put an asterisk on that because those are authorized positions. And for those particular positions, funding will be provided once those positions are, we're told by CPD that those positions are ready to fill. And so we're ready to fund those as soon as CPD is ready to fill those. For the mental health co-responder, that position is added. Just a refresher on that, that is essentially a social worker that goes out in tandem with a police officer to help respond to our homeless population and those with substantial mental health needs. We've seen a lot of success in that area, and this brings the staffing in that space close to full staff. I think it's 4 or 5, somewhere in that space. I think it's close to 4, maybe.
Good.
And again, like I mentioned, around the swapping for positions, it says -4 for +2. Again, that's to make, those were lower price point positions for higher price point positions. So that's why, again, throughout the budget, you might see some of that activity happening, but that's just to get to budget neutral outcomes. And then we talked earlier for the city attorney position, budget, about that transfer of the special assistant over.
CPD.
So that's showing a -1 here.
Sorry,
Sorry.
CPD transfer.
Yeah, it's a transfer out of CPD and into city attorney's office budget.
From earlier.
Yeah.
So the two crime scene investigator are detectives?
Are you asking if they're detectives?
Are they detectives?
Are crime scene investigators detectives?
So you have civilian crime scene investigators and then you have sworn. And, I'm not clear on which one of these are, being funded, but I would assume that they're.
I think these are, civilian. I think that's right. These are not, I don't think these are sworn.
Thank you.
Trying to retain the majority of our sworn within, actual enforcement, but we do have to have some sworn over there in order to guide the civilian as to what is needed.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yep, that's good. And then the last piece I would just mention here is the McCamey. So we certainly got, we've heard a lot of feedback from council members in terms of McCamey animal control and enforcement. And so we've had a couple conversations with McCamey over the past month. And it's our position that the contract with McCamey has to be first reconciled with city code. There's a lot of opportunity there. The code is quite outdated, I would say. And so that is a first priority in order to really get on top of the enforcement situation. And then there's an opportunity to revisit the contract. And then there's an opportunity to reevaluate which department should own that contract. I think there's certainly a case to be made about whether it should live with CPD or elsewhere in terms of enforcement. So a lot of good dialogue over the last month. This is a priority for us. I would say within the next 6 months, we have a lot of opportunity to rethink animal control within the city of Chattanooga. Just don't feel like we can completely untangle the contract and city code in a way that is as thoughtful and intentional as it needs to be prior to budget passing, and make really big changes in this exact moment. But we are committed to a path to getting it to a stronger place in partnership with council. So anyway, those are the first high level thoughts for police.
Councilman.
So Ryan, you kind of opened a can of worms there.
Oh, no. Yeah.
I did not open that can of worms.
Well,
That can of worms was open for me.
some members might have opened that can. Can you outline what that looks like in reevaluating city code? Obviously, that would take a vote of council to adopt new city code. Is that going to be a committee? Is that going to be a task force? Is that going to involve anyone from council on that? What will that look like, A? And B, what's McCamey's response been to, obviously, some questions and
Yeah.
in regards to this?
Sure. Well, I would say I've just had a first conversation with Councilwoman Burrs about it and with the city attorney about it. So in terms of how we go about looking at city code and adjusting it, I think it's probably most proper for us to partner with the council chair and say, how should we partner together with the city council on this? I don't think there's an intention for us to operate in a vacuum necessarily, and so, but I also don't think it needs to be 9 people figuring this out together. So we haven't really talked in depth about that, but I think it needs to be, thoughtful about how we partner together on that, and we don't do it in a vacuum. So that's number one. So
Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
Piggyback on, is this an opportunity for us to utilize any of our outside resources such as UTC?
Could be.
To actually do some legwork for us and looking around the country to see what might be working?
Sure. And if that's how council wants to help partner, and I mean, that's council's contract, right?
I mean, I felt like they were very helpful the last time we went through a policy change. I felt like Chris gave us some really good information. I don't know who that would be this time, but I'm just throwing it out there as a suggestion.
Ma'am.
Yes, I had a couple questions, because every day in East Lake, we're getting attacked by dogs, chickens, roosters, goats, everything everywhere. It's just unregulated. It's almost a farmland, but it's inside the city. So this is a very high priority. So I got a couple questions.
I'm gonna help you on those chickens.
We'll make them legal.
Right.
Can I help with the goats?
The goats, everything.
I'm for goats.
I'm for all the things, just need it regulated in a way that it's the enforcement. It just
Yeah.
boils down to that enforcement.
Sure.
How is it being enforced? And I think that's something we've hammered down. Chairman Burrs has hammered
Yes.
almost beating a dead horse, but if it was a dead horse, nobody would come pick it up, you know? That's how bad, that's how bad it is. So I'm just saying,
What, I gotta say, I drink a lot.
No, right. I mean, nobody come get it, so. Yes. So we're currently in contract with McCamey, correct?
Correct.
Okay, is it a year-to-year contract? Can we make it,
No.
what is it?
It's through, I believe, 2027.
All right, so we are currently in a contract with them, and are we, what's my other question? So I guess it goes back to, what you're doing then, reconciling with the code, reviewing it, and then you said like 6 months. In the meantime, we're still gonna be living out here in the urban farmland in East Lake. So what steps can we take within that contract for them to do what they are supposed to do? Because if they're, right now, if we looked at it, they have to be outside of it. Like, I just can't see why they would be. What other remedies would we have? I do like the idea of the research study, but what is a tangible thing that could happen to help? And the city's big, you know, they're not gonna resolve every single issue, but I'm saying, what is a tangible thing that we can do right now?
Yeah, and I think to your point, there's long-term and there's short-term, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what you're getting at, to say, what we're talking about is the long-term gain
Mm-hmm.
here, and what you're talking about is, hey, short-term, we got some issues right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, in talking with them yesterday, something that McCamey really brought across to us is, hey, we would love to increase communication, and that sounds really basic, right? But
It is.
I think I think it would be really helpful to start putting really specific lists from your district together, and we're happy to be the convener. You know, if there needs to be a convener, but because something I said very specifically was, what are the interactions looking like between McCamey and specific council people around the issues in each of the districts? Because I think that's something that needs to be happening if it's not happening. And again, we're happy to help convene those if that's helpful, but I think we need to get more on the front foot with some of these things and be specific about what are those areas. And similar to some things we tackle sometimes with CPD, right? Sometimes there's some noise, but when there's a lot of noise around a specific area, we can partner together and we can have a targeted effort and make some progress, you know?
Okay.
And so let's figure out how we can convene some conversations around some real challenging areas and make some progress would be something really tangible.
Okay. And I don't mean to be nitpicky, but I kind of do.
Okay.
So what is the clawback language if, for instance, we get a response of, well, we just need to educate the people more, or, well, we got other stuff to do, or, well, you know, that we're giving you $2 million and you can't come out here and get this together? I mean, I understand, and staffing is an issue, but that's everywhere, so that's
Yeah,
inexcusable at this point.
That's your point. That's where we have to manage the contract.
Okay.
Right? And we have to see, like, what does the contract require? And are they performing the contract?
Right.
And at the end of the day, if they are, they are. And if they're not, they're not. And does the contract have the right requirements in it? And I think this is where Councilwoman Burrs was saying, maybe our expectations and the goalposts have moved beyond what the contract is actually requiring. And that's why we have to sit down, and this is why I'm gonna ask the chairman to help me figure out how we partner best with council on this, because we gotta figure out what do we want in that contract, right? Because if the current contract's okay, great. But if the goalposts have moved and that contract is outdated, we've got a gap.
Okay.
And we gotta figure out how to move the goalposts. And they might say, okay, we're okay moving the goalposts, we just need to adjust the funding. Or we might say, no, you gotta keep the funding the way it is, and we're gonna move the goalposts in, you know, but those are all conversations we can have. We just need time.
Okay.
You know, we need some time to work through that process and have accountability there to make that happen.
Okay, Ryan, I trust you. I'm gonna trust you a little bit, but I trust Chip too. So I think, Chairman. So I think we'll get it done. That's all I wanted.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so to me, the most logical place to start would be have Stan do an audit of the contract.
Okay.
Compare it to what they're supposed to provide and what they are providing. I mean, I think that's just a nuts and bolts type of thing, and that's something that I think he could probably do right away. And then we use that audit report maybe to discuss what else is, where are the holes in that, if they are indeed meeting their contract, or maybe they're not. That lets us know up front what we need to do. If they're not meeting their contract, then we need to know that. And I would assume, I don't want to assume, but there's some, should be somewhere in that contract that if there are in breach of that contract, either we can remove the funding or they
Yes.
correct the breach.
That's correct, yeah,
So-
there is,
I would say let's start there
okay,
and then address it from that point.
okay. We can do that.
I have a question of Phil. I keep hearing code and all this stuff. Talk to me about that. McCamey is in our code?
The only reference at all to McCamey is in a footnote in the code, which was all taken out in 2014, without any reference removed, except for one footnote.
Which
There's one
is?
reference in chapter 38, I believe, to McCamey, and that is it.
So we could today get rid of that footnote.
Yes.
Is that the ordinance thing you're talking about?
That is one ordinance thing they're talking about, I believe, that the aspect of how the administration works here, the contract that you have, which is a 5-year agreement going through 2027, is one thing that you're
Which has a clawback clause.
It does have a
Excuse
clawback
me,
clause.
we could say today, we're through, give them 60-day notice. I'm not saying we are gonna do that, that would be foolhardy. What I'm saying is, we're not as hamstrung as we seem to be. In the meantime, the dogs are in their neighborhoods and the chickens,
There is a minor problem about owning the property, and they own the property and we do not at this point.
where they are. I think it's not an all or nothing thing. I think what they do well, they do well.
Yes.
It's the services to the people out in the neighborhoods that seem not to be satisfactory. So I don't think it's an all or nothing at all. It seems to be animals, barking dogs, roaming dogs, that sort of thing.
And definitely having more, involvement here and letting y'all know, at least contact-wise here, who will resolve those issues, I think is important. And I don't think the communication has been as good as it needs to be.
Okay.
So clearly in this provisions, it does provide for all animals who are roaming at large in here, and it provides for issues with animals that are, hurting people on there.
Well, that's what I thought. And so I'm not sure what's not to understand about that.
Yes.
It's,
Yeah, at the same time, it also says that they must operate a humane shelter.
which they do a good job of.
Right, but if they take up every disorderly animal, they essentially cannot maintain a humane shelter. And so, this back to the larger study in terms of how other communities are approaching it. I do think it's we're not the only community facing a challenge here in terms of how to manage it. There's also other organizations in our larger community that are trying to figure this out. So I think there's opportunity to think about this carefully and figure this out without compressing us into a 2 or 3 week cycle. So
Hey, Ryan, Phil might have just touched on this. So they own the building,
Yes.
or they own the land, or they own both?
Land. They own the land and the building at this point in time, and I guess they can make the decisions to expand if they chose. It may be an issue of funding.
Okay, so they own that. Do we know what percentage of their budget is city dollars?
a little less than 50%.
Okay, so close to half of their operating budget is coming from the city.
That's right.
Are there any other, yes?
Well, one point about McCamey is, I think
we have reestablished the Animal Control Board, and as we look at any language in our code, I would recommend that we bring them into that conversation. They're people that care a lot and are thoughtful, and I think they would be helpful. I do have a question about the police budget outside of McCamey, if I may pivot.
Sure.
Okay, so we have a real challenge citywide when it comes to traffic safety enforcement. And in preparation for this budget cycle, that was one of the things that I elevated to the administration, was how can we do this better? Acknowledging the reality that it is difficult to be fully staffed with sworn officers. And so I appreciate that we've got this potential additional 23 police officers, but it's my understanding that for years now, we have been holding open police officer positions that the police department has been unable to fill. So talk with me, please, about how this year's budget can help address the real need that we have to enforce speeding laws, aggressive driving laws, protecting, signal changes, protecting pedestrians, things like this. We've had a woman who's come to council several times about her street and the people drive too quickly down her street. How are we making moves to make sure that people are following traffic laws with this budget?
Yeah, and I don't know, I think Chief Murphy maybe had to leave, I'm not sure if Chief Sutton can speak a little bit more specifically to it. I will say that technology has to play a role, because we are not going to be able to, at the end of the day, we have to decide where to place our bets in terms of our officers and prioritize our officers' time. And so technology can help go farther. I know I've appreciated some of our new signs that have been out telling folks how fast they're driving, and when it's over the speed limit, flashing red and blue lights at you. It slowed me down at least a few times. Not that I was speeding, but the guy next to me must have been. Yeah, the guy next to me must have been going real fast. So, but there is a place for technology to help in terms of reflecting back to people as a mirror. Hey, you're going too fast. You got to slow down. And so that's one element. And along those lines, we are looking at school zones that are in city limits that are on thoroughfares. So I know we had someone come visit us whose child was hit in front of CSAS. That's a busy road, and there is an allowance by state law to have automatic speed detection in front of schools. And so that is something we're taking a look at. And the funds from that can actually be put back into pedestrian safety. And I think that is a great opportunity for us, and that's something that we're taking a strong look at. And on a pilot basis in front of a few key schools like that, Orchard Knob Middle and Elementary, similar kind of thought process. And so I think, again, technology can play a strong role. I would defer a little bit more to the police department to speak about how, they're assigning and shifting around police officers in terms of priorities. But I don't know if Chief Sutton wants to say a few words.
So our manpower is currently around about 410, 413. That's variable based on who's actually
Sworn
here.
officers?
Yes. Variable based on who's still here from military assignments are they getting. We are trying to get back up to our full strength. There's a challenge in that. It's through the hiring process. The process itself is pretty lengthy. So we're moving to bring individuals on in a civilian capacity until we reach the number that we can fill the actual academy. They will be doing duties around the police department that are law enforcement related, but not enforcement related. And so once we build up to the point of a full academy, we will begin the academy, cycle those folks through, try to get them on the street as expeditiously as possible. The key factor is getting up to an operable strength in order to be able to backfill a lot of the positions that have gone vacant through attrition, retirement, discipline, various reasons. And then being able to obtain the grant funding that will be necessary to fuel the technology that is needed to assist officers in their day-to-day practice. Yes, you can do a lot with technology in terms of speed reduction. Obviously, you can put stationary devices in place where you won't necessarily have to have an officer. But that's going to gather the data that we need to do the enforcement. The enforcement piece is still going to come from a physical body
Okay.
until, laws change to address it otherwise. The actual enforcement action portion of it is going to come from the physical body. Now, first priority is always saving of life. And so violent crime receives the majority of the attention. Especially events come during the summer. It consumes an enormous amount of man hours in order to make sure that the events go off without, any issue, that you have the adequate staffing to address any emergency that may emerge during that event. All the while still maintaining the necessary personnel to execute day-to-day duties. So we shift manpower as it becomes necessary for whatever the issue of the day is. At the end of the day, you still have to have the necessary strength at any given time, on any given shift, to be able to address the problems that you have. A lot of that is going to play into the actual number of people that we have working during that day. We have there she is.
I'm trying to defer now.
I'm sure all of you are familiar that we have 3 sectors of town. Each one of those sectors has a certain number of cars depending upon the population density. And then we have to be able to put bodies in those cars on a shift at any given time. That is taken into consideration any sickness, any manpower reallocation for whatever event. So on a great day, we'll be at full capacity. On other days, maybe not. It also depends on shift overlapping. The bottom line is, we gotta get back to our numbers to be
Which
able
are
to
what?
address issues.
So we've got 410 sworn officers right now. We
What's
have a
your-
goal of full strength. What is full strength?
Yeah.
Full strength, as I understand it, Brian, is back up to 500.
Right.
That's a gap, yeah.
And so that 500 includes the 23 new, assuming new combined.
Right.
Okay, and so one of the strategies you're using is to bring people in as civilians to do civilian work who want to go to the academy until we've got enough folks for an academy.
And to keep that process constantly flowing so that you always have bodies ready to go into the academy for the next academy that comes up.
Okay.
Also factor in whatever your attrition is for the year to make sure that you're processing enough applications in order to get those bodies in seats through the process, on the street, through the field training program. There are multiple steps that they have to get through before they get to the point of enforcement. That's quality control, because we don't want to put any bad apples
Right.
out on the street.
So how big are our academies right now?
They have been averaging about 15. We're trying to get back up to 30. When I came through, we were 36, and the academy before me was 50.
Wow. But they're capping it at 30 because of the range.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the way that you've got this plan to bring in the civilians, will that just change you will no longer do a 15 academy, you'll always do a 30 academy?
We'll do as many as we can hire in, and this process has streamlined it and made it so much that we're not losing people in the process, so you will have bigger classes just by default.
Okay.
So right now, we're tracking to hopefully have at least 25 in the next class, if not more. I'm just saying 25, because some may fall through the process of, you know, you know, you gotta go through the physical, you gotta go through your mental health evaluation, all that stuff. Sometimes that may bump out people that we've even considered good hires. So we're tracking right now to definitely have a 20 to 25 class for sure, if not more.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Darren?
I'll defer to
Yeah, go
Councilwoman
ahead.
Dolly.
Oh, I just had a question about well, y'all have, I know y'all like acronyms, the night entertainment team this summer, the Nets, what's it called? So y'all have that this summer?
Yeah, we never really stopped
Stopped
it,
it,
even though we
okay.
promised the officers we weren't going to.
Okay.
But we just, we're not, and, you know, because of the manpower issues, and then, you know, we use them not just for that, you know, what it was originally intended for. We're finding that now in those spaces, wherever if we have neighborhood complaints, as well as still monitoring our historic nightlife establishments. So it just was a thing that we just kept going, moving to a spot where now we're even looking to, with more manpower, making it a permanent solution as opposed to a temporary solution. Because right now, we're adjusting our shifts. So that means a piece of the beginning of the shift and sometimes a piece of the bottom of the shift, we're taking people off of 911 calls to be able to do this. Right now, I'd like to have an intentional group that's separate from 911 altogether to only be able to have the capacity to be able to focus on those issues without worrying about 911.
And they're more concentrated on specific
Yeah.
issues and things like
Right,
that.
so in the perfect world, we'll have one in each, you know, sector. So those would be specific to the neighborhoods and the areas that they operate in.
Okay, that's good. Thank you so much, Eva.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, let's talk about recruitment real quick.
Yeah,
I look at you there.
No, I'm good. I was going to the restroom, but I can hold it. Go ahead.
It's your section.
Oh, wow, really? Oh, gee. See how you're
Talking about recruitment, we can't go into out of state still. What efforts, do you, if that were to be changed, do you find that to be
That
effective?
will open up a lot because
Okay.
we're so close to the border. So
Obviously, we're
that'll,
talking with fire, you know.
yeah, that'll greatly open up, you know, our recruitment efforts as well because we're so close to the border.
Okay, and Chief Sutton said, about, obviously, we want you addressing violent crime first and foremost, but is traffic patrol, citations, presence, when I ask for it in East Brainerd to help calm areas, I feel like it really works. Just, even if they're not writing a ticket, they're there, and I will tell you, it brings people, go, okay, whoa, you know, they look back, I swear you can see a difference.
And that's a part of what we're trying to do now with, you know, having incoming resources with this recruitment, with our recruitment efforts, is to be able to earmark, you know, certain officers to specifically meet the needs of our community. Because we want to, there's perception and there's data, right? So we're handling the data really well. We want to, you know, kind of be able to have the capacity to get more in our neighborhoods to be able to address those areas of perception and those quality of life issues that, because trust me, I get a lot of them as well. Y'all not the only ones getting the emails and the calls. I get them as well. So I get it. I know sometimes they take on more of its own, you know, more life than what the data was showing, and I get it. So we're trying to meet the needs of both.
Okay.
Anything else?
I wish I could think of something, but
I
I'll
know
let her
he's
go.
trying.
But I'll let her go.
Well, actually, I got some things I want to talk about. No.
I would just say on the last part of that, I appreciate when I've talked to you and Captain Francis now and Captain Gibbons before that about addressing certain hotspots. I think it's important for us to not be bashful about reaching out and letting them know because I have seen the presence and it does make a difference. I really believe that.
So, you know, what we try to do, I know a lot of times, you know, the supervisors are good with going to the neighborhood meetings. Sometimes I tell you guys, y'all want to do a round robin in your districts, I'll come out there. A lot of people are sending a lot of their concerns through some of the apps that I don't necessarily follow. Some of my supervisors do.
Yeah.
But we follow data until, you know, we get you calling or emailing. And then we're like, okay, well, didn't know about that. Let's go look into that for you. But if people are just using those as a means to communicate with us, by that time they're frustrated and they're angry, and then they're building up a rhythm with everybody in their neighborhood, and it could just easily be fixed. All you gotta do is let them know what's happening.
And it's where they vent, I promise. Yeah.
I don't follow those apps either.
Oh,
I don't have time. I got so
Anything
much
else?
going on. Not that I don't want to, I just don't have time.
Yes. Go ahead.
So, going back, kind of innovation and speed reduction, in some other states, like Department of Transportation, people have blue lights on the top of their vehicles in construction zones. I mean, there's probably not anything that would get somebody to slow down quicker than seeing blue lights.
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess I'm just asking from a police standpoint, would y'all have or see a problem with, and I'm sure this would have to probably get some state legislature approval, but putting blue lights on some of our CDOT vehicles?
Law does not allow that.
Yeah, like
No,
that.
I understand
See,
that.
say-
Now, what I'm asking is, if we were able to get it changed at the state level,
So you're
do
gonna
you have a
run in-
concern with,
Yes,
the,
yes, and the reason why is because when you put law enforcement lights on a non-enforcement entity, you run into issues. That's the reason why we had a problem with the cameras that would, take tags and send citations to people in the mail. Again, a body is required, and Phil, correct me where I'm wrong, but a body is required in order to enforce an action. An officer has to observe it because that officer then has to go to court to testify on it. So if you take and put blue lights on a public works vehicle and say somebody comes along and runs into the back of the truck, and you go into court, and they'll say, well, I panicked, I ran into the car, I thought I was gonna get a ticket, there's no officer there. I mean, it opens you up to liability and litigation when you don't have the capacity to enforce, even when it's a warning. That's why a lot of your warning signs have amber lights on them, because lights have meaning.
yeah, okay. Well, that's the reason I was asking before we ever pursued it at state level. I mean, I need to pursue something.
State law that have to be changed here.
Yeah, I understand that. But there's no need to try to change the state law if there's concerns
locally.
on the, local police side.
Anything else for the police?
Somebody give me water, so I'm good.
Well, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, we haven't had a session in a while. So, we're
No, go
about to
ahead.
go into the after-school season that we've all been educated
Yeah.
on over the years. You wanna address that real quick?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, that's a collaborative, you're talking about activities for the kids
Yes.
and,
Well,
meeting and those ways. So, yeah, we're collaborating, of course, with the Office of Community Health and Gun Violence, as well with the activities they do. We partner with them. A lot of the new initiatives, and I don't know if Chief Sutton got into it, but we're getting on the beginning stages of, what I'll say is level up on our police activities lead. We're going to initiate that. We're having the meetings to do that now. We even created a position for that. So we're partnering with the YMC YCAP with that to use their spaces, as well as we'll look into some of the community centers and see how we can partner with that. So we're looking for spaces to kind of level up our game with the youth engagement as well.
Yeah, because we know that's a recurring time of year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's data that we know where it is.
Yeah.
Valid,
yeah,
yes. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, Chief.
Right.
We're gonna move on to the fire department.
Moving on to fires.
My favorite.
All right. All right, probably not quite as exciting. Increase of about $500,000. And a lot of that is in 9 authorized sworn positions, 1 fire investigator, and then they also have some operational increases that are fairly substantial. Some of that is around promotional testing and around vehicle costs as well. So That's really, those are the big things happening in fire.
Question about fire. I know there, I guess, down the pipeline, maybe there are 2 incoming fire stations. I think one at, is it Black Creek?
Yeah.
Okay, so one there, hopefully one at, oh, my favorite people. Hey. Yes, so I know it's one at Black Creek. I know Station 14 has a sinkhole. Of course, it's in South Chattanooga. So are there any updates on those 2, or what's going on with the new stations?
So, the current Black Creek station's on hold, I believe, and the Station 14 there is funding in this budget to get that one going, so,
Okay,
yeah.
right. That's all I wanted, Ryan.
Is that it?
I don't know, Chief Hyman, you need anything over there? You need anything?
Moving right along.
Okay, all right, that's all I need to know. All right, we're good.
Any other questions or concerns relative to fire? Yes, Councilman.
Well, since they were waiting outside so patiently, Chief, I just asked police the same question about recruiting over the state line, and I know that we're working on making those changes for the fire department. Can you talk about how beneficial, I know we've covered this recently, but can you attest or give your testimony to how beneficial you think that is going to be?
I know of lots of people personally, 20-something people that live outside of the city limits or out of the state of Tennessee that would be willing to come here right now for a job. So.
That are 5 minutes away.
That are 5 minutes away,
Yeah.
that are very close. So I know that opening it up that, there's potential for a lateral academy for folks that have experience, and there's also potential for new hires to go through a full academy. And I think it will, with as difficult as recruiting is nowadays, I think removing that barrier will help us tremendously.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anything else?
Well, you brought that up a couple times. Where is that in the state conversation right now?
Well, that's where it's at, actually.
Just that,
It's in the state conversation. As far as the fire, you want to give us an update on where
Like,
you're at
did it
with the
make it to
plan?
general session?
The plan for.
Hiring across state lines.
Yeah, where is that in the legislative discussion
As far
ether?
as I know, the state was on board with it, that it's here locally that has to have the change.
Yeah, it requires a charter amendment here, so it will be a ballot initiative. We'll bring something to you all in the future, but the state, item had to happen first, and then we are able to do some work locally, but.
So did it
does-
pass in this session is what I'm,
Yes.
it
Yes.
passed in this
It
session?
passed in the state level.
Okay.
And now it has to be on a local ballot.
Local ballot, got it, okay.
Is that applicable to fire and police?
Yes.
Yes.
All city
It would be
All city
All city employees.
And will we,
This could be a game changer.
will that have to wait until the next city election to be on the ballot, or can it be just on the next ballot that we qualify?
We are currently
Next
looking at
general.
options for when it is best to place it on the ballot, Madam Vice Chair, and we'll have an answer for you on that within the next few weeks.
Okay.
Chris, can you elaborate on that a little bit further? You're talking about this fall's elections or the city election next spring?
We are evaluating both of those options.
So those are
Answer
options.
for you.
Those are options.
Yes,
They
sir.
are.
Those are options?
Yes.
That is fantastic
Those are all
options. Okay, great, thank you. That's good work.
Yep. All right. Are we good on fire? Okay. All right. Moving on. Public Works. All right. Public Works. A net increase of 13 positions. This shows an increase of 6.1 million. Again, there's quite a bit of noise here because, like what I mentioned from Technology Services, of the movement of those technology services, smart cities, business area back over to Public Works. So that's about 4.9 million of the 6.1 million. So that's what is making up a large chunk of what's happening here. So I just want to call that out. And also that one position from RPA that I mentioned is also moving in. Within the LDO area, we did a position swap to create a senior ombudsman's position. That's to really help with the permitting process, so that's what's happening there. And then we get into some other pieces around enforcement. So just to call out code inspectors. So these are actually, we swapped a couple positions for 2 code inspectors for garbage. You might ask, well, what does that mean? Well, yesterday we actually had, because of hazardous materials in garbage cans, we had some garbage catch on fire in the back of a garbage truck that the fire department then had to come and put out and dump it in a church parking lot. Aren't you glad that wasn't your church?
I am.
It was somebody's church though, and so anyway, all that to say, these code inspectors for garbage would go out and make sure, you know, folks are following the rules in terms of the right garbage being put in garbage cans, the right recycling being put in recycling containers, the right kind of brush being put out, etc. Because it actually causes.
Yeah, how do you go and like go
Go out there and lift the lid.
I think there's some spot inspections
Ross is
happening
like,
there.
yep.
There's some spots.
I want you to see what's in my trash.
I guess I'm gonna quit putting my paint cans in.
Guess so.
As long as it's dry.
Right. As long as it's dry. So will they fine people if something in the trash ain't supposed to be?
They'll get warnings.
They'll get warnings. Okay.
Chicken manure?
Okay.
That goes on the garbage.
Are they
What are you
really
talking
going
about?
through garbage cans?
The challenge that we have right now, these garbage cans are being overloaded and have materials in them, especially with recycling material. With recycling material, the
Are
trash is
these
in it
more
and contaminates it.
commercial areas or all
No,
areas?
it could be any areas.
I think like everything, right? You're not going through looking at, you know, your average cans. You're focusing on your biggest offenders, right?
Oh, okay.
And so a lot of times you're probably, at least you're starting with talking to our drivers and saying, hey,
Okay.
where are our problem cans? And you're going to those residents and you're writing a warning, and then from there you're taking it on up the line from a warning, right?
Oh.
Because this impacts our drivers, and
Sure.
it actually impacts our trucks, because the overloaded cans, they actually impact the arms, right? And so our arms break, and then our truck's out of service, and it impacts the whole fleet, right?
Oh my gosh.
And so there's a lot of ripple effects from this stuff. So I think it's like everything else. We start with the top 10 most wanted, and then we work down the list from there. So yeah. So I wanted to call that out. We've already talked about increasing the AHO funding. We have had something where, you know, we went from how did you call it on the agenda? Public hearing officer.
Yeah.
So we used to have a public hearing officer and we had an AHO. And those followed somewhat different processes and procedures. So we no longer have a public hearing officer. We only have the AHO. And so that sounds like just a technicality, but it actually is a streamlining for our processes. So now we only have AHO, and we have a couple different people who can fill that need. There still is opportunity for continuing to work on those processes, both in terms of how it works with our LDO and in terms of how it works with city court. We know that there's opportunity to continue to lean into that. But that will be part of the focus this year.
Okay, so back off a minute.
Yeah, sure.
So, say what you said just again about an administrative hearing officer, and we have a couple of people. Tell me what you mean there.
I'm gonna let someone who knows more about it tell you
We've
more
got
about
Jim
that.
and,
Well, I know them, Jim and Mike, if possible. So you got rid of, are you making everything fall under this administrative hearing officer? Like the things that Judge Williams was doing, is that still
Yes.
separate?
We formerly had demolition court, I think is what you're
Yeah,
thinking of,
yeah.
was previously under the public hearing officer,
Right.
and that has been consolidated under the administrative
It's
hearing
managed-
officer.
Okay,
So that there's some more consistency in that process,
Good.
and also, I can't say with confidence, but would imagine that there will be some cost savings there in terms of not having two separate,
all right, so this process, this whole thing has been going on for a very long time. And we can't, ostensibly, can't seem to get it all together. And what I'm trying to figure out is, what is holding us back? Is it space? Is it money? What is it? Because what we're getting from constituents is, well, it's noise, or it's short-term vacation rentals, or it's all this sort of thing. And we went from maybe a year ago having this plan to go forward, and we're still kind of fritzing around with it. And so this really isn't a loaded question. It's what's the problem? It may be we don't have space, or it may be, I don't know.
I don't think it's a space issue,
Okay,
as far as I know. I think it's just making processes work. I think it's making
okay.
people, process, and technology work. So then we're trying to figure that out.
Wait a minute, Councilman Ledford was first. You, okay,
ma'am.
then go ahead.
So I've not been to a hearing. But I know in city court, you've got a judge that sits up on the bench, you have court officers, you have a court reporter, recorder, not reporter, recorder. What kind of staff does the AHO have to support them in this work?
Jermaine, you want to speak to that a little bit with
Well,
Jim?
Chris has been working with most closely with Chris.
Come up here, because I don't want to have to turn around. Absolutely.
Gotta move the bricks.
I'll hold your back if you want me to.
I can keep my
I'll keep it
bricks
safe.
close by me.
Get ready for me.
I got it.
I'll block her. Yes, sir. You ask about, does AHOXM have staff?
Support staff at this hearing level.
There's a court reporter who is an
Court
outside. there's-
Reporter,
Yes,
Court
yes, sir. There's a court reporter who is an outside
Reporter,
report,
reporter.
reporter.
okay. Okay,
She keeps the record. There are also several employees of the Chattanooga City Court Clerk's office who provide support to him when he is in the courtroom too.
so he does have court in a courtroom.
It's legally not a court, it's an administrative hearing, but he does have it in courtroom too.
Okay,
We've been specifically instructed not to call it court.
well, I understand because of the distinction of the two. Is that the hearing officer's dedicated place to hear?
Yes, he has courtroom two on Wednesday afternoons reserved just for the administrative hearing officer.
Demolition hearings are still taking place though in the DRC, Chris, is that correct? Because
That is
that's where
correct,
it-
yes.
Because that's where it has always been, and for the consistency for property owners for the time being, does not mean that it always has to remain there. But we thought through this transition, it was important that there was some level of consistency, because we don't want folks obviously to feel like their properties ever in jeopardy of demolition and then show up at the wrong location. So we need to be very thoughtful about
Okay.
that move, but everything else is
So
over there.
when he issues a correction that may involve money, who enforces that? Does this then go to the courts, city court clerk to
Yes.
record and to collect?
Yes, if we get too deep into an operational question, I might have to say I don't know, but as far as overall, yes, I know that the city court clerk's office creates a case number, and it is in their system, and the fines are paid through the city court
So
clerk's
the
office.
city court clerk is working hand in glove with the administrative hearing officer?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Those are civil penalties, not fines.
Thank you, Phil. Yes.
I knew
I've been
that,
instructed to call them civil penalties, not
I
fines.
knew there was some catchy phrase that you were supposed to use since we can't call it a court either. So is there, and you seem to have some knowledge, is there anything lacking
Thank you.
in this administrative hearing officer position that needs attention?
I don't know about specifically the position, and certainly not the person in the position. He's been wonderful to work with.
I'm not talking about the person. I'm talking about the
The process.
Joe Blow sitting in that seat, Jane Doe, whoever, is in the process. Is there anything lacking that needs attention that would enhance or maybe even be a hindrance at this point to that person doing their job?
I can think of, well, I know that the administration's gonna bring an amendment to the AHO ordinance and empower the AHO to broaden their responsibilities a little bit on a couple of different items that I think a few of you have brought up in public meetings. So we do want to expand their powers to the process. There's nothing that comes to mind off the top of my head that would improve the court process in any way, or the hearing process in any way.
Okay. And how does, so I guess it's either, our code enforcement goes out, let's say we have an illegal short-term vacation rental. Code enforcement would come and say, you're in violation, and cite them to a hearing with the hearing officer,
Yes, sir.
and then they would have to go, so there's nothing in the process that is hindering us from the enforcement side of what we want to see enforced in the areas that they can enforce.
There are challenges. I just don't have
That's,
a way
okay.
to solve all the challenges. I'll give you an example, Chairman.
Well, how about just sending us an email of all the challenges? That way we know what we're working with. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Got it.
And we may wanna talk more about those on,
The third
at the
session.
third meeting.
Okay.
Because this is a biggie right here.
I will need some support from other people in the Department of Public Works on this, but we will get together a list for you.
We need to know what the challenges to this AHO is.
It would seem to me what,
Or
and it's a
challenges.
righteous question. What we keep hearing is, we have this AHO person and we think we have everything in place, and yet things aren't going away.
Right.
And it could be that it's not in the law. It could be, I don't know what it is, but that's what we're asking.
A big obstacle has been out-of-town absentee owners and our ability to serve them with notice.
Okay, I guess it's that kind of thing.
Yes, and that'll be item number 1 in the email, because that is a challenge on some cases. But I do know he has put several out of business and has slapped some large
Fines?
civil penalties
Well,
on.
so what we heard was that the civil penalties, if they don't pay them, are on the form of liens on the property, which means nothing until the property gets sold. I have a couple in my district. One is still on Airbnb because they haven't been closed, because they've been fined. And apparently there's a lien on their property, but that doesn't matter because it doesn't matter till it gets sold. I'm just trying to figure out, yes, Councilman.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we consider, is this working, to acknowledge the goal of council is this AHO working as an enforcement mechanism, and what is still missing? And if a civil penalty either isn't accruing at a meaningful rate, right? Because one of the things we were advised by our attorney was that an AHO can do a per day, per violation issue. So, I mean, I think this council thought, well, like in the example of Councilwoman Burr's situation, that $500 penalty should be accruing every single day for every violation that short-term vacation rental has. So by now, it should, be tens of thousands of dollars over the course of a few months, right? And that should be meaningful. And if that's not happening, we wanna understand. You get where we're going, like,
Absolutely.
the breadth of this, what we're really trying to get to, so that then when it becomes a noise situation and, or some other, horrible nuisance of garbage and camping and barking dogs, and that it can be a meaningful tool.
I understand, and
Okay.
obviously, the fines are up to, the civil penalties, sorry, Phil, are up to the discretion of the administrative hearing officer in terms of, it's not an automatic 500, it's an up to 500. I have seen Mr. Exum assess the maximum amount per day, and I have seen him give more time based on the circumstances, and I think it's good to have somebody making those judgments on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, he has to work within the law as it's written.
And no two cases are the same. It's not as cut and dry as every single one is the same. I wish it was. But we've learned a lot of extenuating circumstances through the process too. Not a lot, but a few, I will say.
Council, we could also just ask Mr. Exum.
He'd be
Alright.
very eager to.
Yeah. Okay, well, so we're scheduling all this follow-up stuff for our third session. So what I'm trying to do now is finish this week and next week, all the department reports. And then the third session is all this stuff we want to talk about, which is good, we'll have plenty of time. And then we'll be able to go to the public hearing or talk to constituents fully informed. Okay,
Session number 3.
yeah, please.
Thank you, Chris, appreciate it. All right, just the only other two things that I haven't mentioned so far that I wanted to highlight here is we did add about $94,000 to the Public Works budget for debris removal for troublesome properties. That is something that we have seen a need for and is helpful in terms of properties where just no debris removal is happening, and sometimes the city has to intercede and helps clean up some not so good looking stuff. So
Are those people then cited?
yes,
Yeah.
and oftentimes without means to remove the debris, and
Okay.
so that just is a means of last resort.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess, what qualifies as debris?
Define debris.
Define debris. I
Yes.
don't know.
Then
I'll
it's
chime in
Councilman
on this. So
Henderson.
these are, so think about, properties where we've maybe had former encampments, or serious challenges.
Okay.
We may, in some cases, they may be city-owned properties that are abated or I'm sorry, that are, back tax properties that we then have to go in and do a cleanup on that site. There are also situations, this is the same line item that we pull from when we have properties that have been very troublesome and we've worked with them, we've then cited them to court, we've not seen compliance, and then we have to come back and say, all right, look, we're gonna do it, but this is then going to result in a lien on your property, for the price tag of the work that we've had done through this contract. So, this is just addressing all of those
Things.
particularly challenging properties and vice versa.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
Councilman Ledford, and Henderson. And then go ahead.
So, Ron, and I don't know if this is the proper place or if I missed it already, but, we talked about some of our recycling centers and them not taking cardboard from some of our smaller businesses. And I think the last time we talked, we were gonna, I think, circle back or look at either something internally or even something to our code as far as continuing to take cardboard and things like that from some of our smaller businesses. Where are we at on that? Are we just kind of don't ask, don't tell, or are we actually adjusting our policy to reflect.
I think you and Ross had the last conversation on that, so I haven't heard the latest.
Well, it was in your office.
Was I in there?
Yeah, you did. No, no, let me back up.
I don't think so.
Maybe it's Julia. It's Julia. I'm sorry.
It wasn't that.
It was Julia.
I don't think I was.
You don't think
We don't look that much alike. I'll take it as a compliment.
Easy mistake.
So there's nothing in code that specifies, but where we landed was basically anybody, nothing more than like a pickup truck full of cardboard, whether it's a small business or not, we would allow. That's where we landed last.
Okay, so that's, I mean, it's just, I guess, an understood policy. It's not actually in a code or in a policy. That's just what we're gonna,
That's just standard practice. That's what we
Practice.
practice. And part of it is it's a cost thing because the more cardboard and trash we get from commercial, the more expensive it is.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
to the city.
well, and I don't know if the council knows this, but apparently it costs us more to get rid of recycles than it does
Municipal solid waste.
trash
That's right.
going to the landfill.
Really?
Yeah, I was surprised to learn that.
Yeah, recycling is not a profitable business
It's-
for us. Yeah.
So, okay,
You good?
all right, thanks.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ryan, good to see the 94,000. And let me take an opportunity to say thank you to you, Julia, Ross, for responding to individuals who have things happen to them. I know that in my district, we've had folks who do not have the means or have not done anything wrong that people dump on their properties and get fined. And then I think the city is doing a really good job of being compassionate about that and respectful and working with citizens to address those needs. Also, when we have things, as we see happen in our districts, the response of our emergency team is phenomenal. And you are to be commended for that because it makes a difference. To see the response to an emergency situation is everything too. And that visual on the spot is just, it builds such confidence in folks, and it just makes their day sometimes to know that y'all are out there. So I want to say thank you, and I think that the adding in the removal for troublesome properties, hopefully that's just a start, because we see a lot of people doing a lot of bad things, and they take advantage. I was going over at Hickory Valley on Bonnie Oaks the other day, and in Dr. Burrs' district, and I noticed a whole corner across from Silverdale where someone just decided to unload everything in there they had into just on the side of the road. So that's unfortunate, but together I hope we definitely make a difference for folks in Chattanooga. So thank you.
It's a problematic area. Councilwoman Knoll? Did you
Oh,
hear
I
anything?
did not.
Yes.
The $500,000 for pedestrian safety, looking at school zones,
Those are two separate things.
okay. The 500,000 K for pedestrian safety, is that new money or is that the grant that we've recently accepted?
No, that's new money.
Okay,
Yeah, and the
so
idea.
it's not dedicated already to one part of town.
No, it's not.
Okay, great.
And the idea there is for some time now, for at least 6 months now, we've had a team coming, cross-departmental team meeting weekly around pedestrian safety. And what became abundantly clear is that we obviously have a lot of needs around interventions in terms of road designs and road markings and lighting, and the list goes on, right? And unfortunately, our regular funding only goes to maintaining existing pedestrian safety needs, right? What's existing crosswalks that need to be refreshed, et cetera, right? And so we started doing some interventions and realized we were quickly depleting our maintenance funds for existing refresh of existing needs. And so this is to try to get out in front of some strategic interventions around pedestrian safety around the city, using a data-informed approach. you know, really for that team as they look in a cross-functional way, between public works, planning, police, et cetera, to figure out where should we invest those dollars, so.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. I'm glad to know that there's been that cross-functional team meeting. That's terrific.
Is that crosswalks too?
Yep, crosswalk,
Crosswalks.
including crosswalks, yep.
Anything else?
Okay.
Public Works, anything else?
I had more of an operations question, I guess.
Yes, ma'am.
So a lot of times, and I know you were talking about how the trucks can get messed up if the trash is too heavy. But a lot of times I see in East Lake, trash picked up, dumped, and then it's not fully dumped out, and then it just empties the rest of whatever at the bottom of the trash can in the street.
Oh.
Is somebody supposed to pick that up? Like, is that I see it all the all the time. But I also know my neighbors have overflow trash.
Yeah,
So what is that process? I mean, what is the situation there? Again, it goes back to, we're doing the budget, what's the
Yeah, I
plan here?
think, Ross could probably speak to this better than me, but my guess is, and Ross is gonna correct me after I say this, but, I think that there could be a couple things. One, to your point, is if it's an overflowing trash can, it's gonna greatly increase the chances of the trash spilling, when it's picked up and put into the trash, the garbage truck, right? So, sometimes it's a self-inflicted, wound there. The other side of that coin is it could be sometimes our folks moving too quickly, So if our folks are moving too quickly, then I think there's a chance of trash, coming out more, as well. So there's probably different reasons that could contribute to that. But a consistently overflowing trash can and a driver who notices that would be a great opportunity for those garbage inspectors to have a conversation there and say, hey, and anyway, I don't know if there's anything else you add.
But I think the question was, who picks it up?
Who pick it up? That's all I mean, they come talk to them and everything, but it's
Yeah.
still laid out there
Who
for
picks it
until
up?
it rains or
Still there.
something.
Yeah, I don't know. I know when it's on mine, I pick it up when I come home that day.
Our challenge is that the drivers have a very long route, so their willingness to get out, A, do they recognize that, that's one issue, but two, their willingness to get out could be, a challenge, because when 600 to 800 cans is roughly what you want them to pick up in a day, our guys are picking up 1,000, 1,200 a day, so they're going very fast and working very long days. I mean, we have over $500,000 in overtime in a year, so we would want them to pick it up, but, them recognizing it, because they are in a big truck that, there are cameras, but they don't have their green covered, and then, sometimes stuff sticks to the bottom of the can, and so not exactly the greatest answer.
Okay, well, that's fine. I mean, it's an answer and I appreciate it. I ain't got to like it for it to be true. And then the other one is, I didn't peruse this as much as I probably should have, but what is the budget for like replacement cans? I know a lot of times, some of it is because of that, like the trash cans are torn up, like no lids, broke on the side, just torn up. So what's the budget for that?
It's actually more than you expect. I don't have a number offhand, but
It used to be $53 about 5 or 6 years ago. It used to be $53 we bought them for. That was a while back.
she's asking, you talking per can, or are you talking total budget?
Well, I can do total
Ross
and
just
per
said
can.
it's $500,000.
It's $500,000?
Yeah,
We
we
wanted
said-
600,000, but we're going 500,000, it's about
Yep.
$75 a can, so.
Okay, is that then passed back on to the resident to pay for that can?
It depends. If
Oh,
it's a replacement, if it's a damaged can, typically no, but like if they get stolen, they should be paying $75. If it's new resident, I don't think they do.
okay,
Check that, so, but it is a challenge because, we're a growing city too, so all these new residents get garbage can and recycle cans, so sometimes it can be 2 cans, so, it might seem like a lot, but it doesn't go that far.
okay,
It's a big line item in their budget, and
Right.
so when we meet monthly with the budget team and look at how it's trending up and down, it's a big conversation, and they actually have improved how they're tracking it within Public Works so that they can more closely monitor it and manage it better. So,
okay.
We get those on a sole source, do we not?
I don't know.
I don't know if they come from Toad, I don't know if it's sole source.
Okay.
Okay,
No,
okay.
I don't think so.
They don't seem like a source.
I hope it's not a sole source. If not, I'm gonna give them some competition. Well, it's not that complicated.
We have a company that makes containers in town. in case you're-
Yeah.
Okay.
Something to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Anything else about public works?
All right.
The next is parks and outdoors. Do you have them? or
Sure we
you-
do.
Sure we do.
I don't know, but we're gonna keep rolling.
Yeah.
This train keeps moving.
Yeah.
Say we are into.
Yeah, Jermaine and Julia in here. They know
We're in our
everything.
second
They know
session.
everything.
Yeah.
And I'm here just talking.
Yes.
so.
And
But it sounds impressive.
All right, thanks, Ross. All right, parks and outdoors.
Right.
So, you know, pretty flat, frankly. So $85,000 increase, which out of a $17 million budget is incredibly flat. It shows a net reduction of 1, but that is just because they did one of those swaps that I talked about. So you can see they swapped 2 part-time positions for 1 full-time position to pay for that full-time position. So in my old world where you talk about FTEs instead of headcount, that wouldn't even show up in terms of, for a net reduction of 1. But anyway, so you know, really what's going on here is on the personnel was down a bit, operations is up a bit, but most of the movement is pretty minimal. So anything in particular y'all wanted to focus on?
Is the trailer fixed? The activity trailer?
That's a great question. I actually don't know, but I'll check on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Where are we at? We had a deputy administrator leave.
We did.
Where we at on replacement?
We will have an announcement for you soon. We have gotten down to a finalist and extended an offer, but need to confirm before we're ready to share about.
Who actually, does Scott make the decision as to?
In combination with the administration. It is a mayoral appointment,
Oh, it's a mayoral appointment.
Yes, sir.
And then, I know, Ted Broyles retired, but yet he's still working for us. We not found anybody to fill that position, or we just
That position has been posted.
happy to
Yeah.
continue to work him as a retired person? Is that what the deal is?
That position's posted.
It's posted,
It's
yeah.
posted?
Yeah.
But have we had any response?
I don't know.
I would have to ask the hiring manager that's within the department.
Okay. I got one more. Our youth association fields. I'm not sure how many we have, maybe 5,
That's right.
handful. I'm starting to see, when my kids played, we had a lot of volunteer participation to help line the fields, drag the fields, mow the fields, yada, yada, yada. This millennial generation,
We're the worst.
they hadn't found a rake or shovel that fits their hand.
Nope, it's not one.
I'm trying not to
They
take
made
this too
one.
personal.
Right? I'm just, you let the chips fall where they may. But we're having a hard time maintaining our youth association fields. Have we given any consideration to addressing that?
Yeah, well, you'll see, actually, it's interesting in this budget, we have some adjustments in terms of maintenance increase to building and grounds maintenance. So in some cases, we're insourcing some of our maintenance, and I don't know if that's hitting some of those
I would have
fields.
to go back because I'm not positive, truthfully, on all of our youth association agreements, like where the maintenance sits on all of them. It may not be consistent across all of them either.
It is uniquely varied. I mean, it's.
Right.
Yeah,
So I would have to go back and look specific to the fields where we're seeing more challenges, but that's certainly something we can come back with more information on. We do have a good bit of dollars set aside in this budget, as well as from some of our operational efficiencies from this current fiscal year for deferred maintenance items. I don't know if there are any specific to youth associations, But we have had some conversations over the last couple of years where we've needed to, level set expectations with some of these association partners. And so if that's the situation, on these mentioned, then we can certainly do that. So
Well, I mean,
can follow up with you on
yeah.
the specific fields and.
I just think it seems like maybe at some point, we're gonna have to rethink a little bit of what we do.
And there is, so, just for your all's awareness, and I think this has been mentioned in a prior committee meeting for Parks and Outdoors, is that they are going through another, a master planning process, but specific to recreation. And understanding our needs, both from programmatic to facilities, specific to recreation. So there will be more coming, over this year in that space.
Okay.
I'll also mention that, and this might work better for soccer fields and football fields than it would for baseball or softball, but we are actually buying our second robot for lining fields.
Yeah.
And that really, it sounds a little crazy, but it takes a lot of manpower off from the lining. And, you know, some millennials might be willing to fund a robot for the association and not pick up the rake or shovel. So, depending on the kind of field, that might work. So that's another thing. You know, we got to think about technology with some of the associations as well. So.
And I'm just gonna throw this out there as well. I really do think that we need to have serious thought about going ahead and turfing the other two fields at Warner Park to try to stay ahead of the ball game.
Pun intended.
Exactly. We want to be on the forefront of athletics in Chattanooga, not behind and trying to catch up. And I do think that is a critical need. I say need, a thing that we need to look at. Opportunity. That is a economic opportunity.
I agree.
Agreed.
So let's take this other part of Parks and Outdoors that Councilwoman Dotley talked about earlier. It's another one of how are our dollars being spent to impact equity? In other words.
From the RFP conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're talking.
We'll do that later.
And I'm not sure how you want to get to it, but there's a whole conversation. And Jenny, you said it better, just a little while ago, when you were talking about, we talk about impact of outsourcing, but what's our impact of insourcing, for lack of a better word? And that's really a thoughtful way to look at it. How is our money impacting what our mission statements, our goals, which we haven't reviewed, Mr. Chair, we were gonna do that. Review our goals and objectives.
Yeah, but I think it was more after, I mean.
Well, I was looking.
It's kind of a little late, but I think it was after budget.
Well, I'm wondering if we shouldn't be talking about them.
Yeah.
Based on what everyone said during budget. So we're gonna finish a lot of this today, and then, next week, we will have just the rest of the departments. Week 3, if you will, is when we're gonna have the impact discussion. And I'm just wondering if either next week or the following week, before we make final budget decisions, if we shouldn't follow up on council's request. Because if you know a city by its budget, and if you know what our mission is and what we've said we're gonna do by the budget, and shouldn't that be part of the whole conversation? We have the time either next week or the following week, and maybe we might have it at the end of next week to go over that mission statement. In other words, you could have a strategic planning meeting it's not gonna take us all day to do this.
Just incorporate it into the budget.
All right, may I do that,
Yeah,
sir?
just put it at the end if you
I'll
want
do it at
to, and
the
we'll
end
review
of
it.
next
I mean,
week, yeah.
it don't have to be strategic planning.
Okay, I'll do it at the end of next week. And then week 3 is when we do the deep dive into all the concerns we had about impact. Whoever is doing public safety is looking at how does this impact what our goals
Yeah.
are for, does that make sense? Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else for Parks and Outdoors?
I do have a question. So, and you touched on it, but we don't have much detail. Maintenance for our parks. When we decided to adopt the POP, that was a big part of the conversation was we have deferred maintenance, we want to build new parks, but we need to take good care of them.
Right.
We're currently being sued for something that could have been fixed for a couple $100, and instead we're being sued for a cross tie, you know. What does this budget do to start to address a commitment to maintenance?
So, what I mentioned was we're increasing building and ground maintenance, for Parks and Outdoors by $96,000. What's in capital is $1 million of deferred maintenance
Okay.
for parks citywide. That is what you're I think a little bit more what you're talking about, because increasing building and ground maintenance is a little bit more. I'm not exactly sure what's in there. We'd have to pull someone from parks specifically, but my guess is it's more increasing mowing, increasing, facilities maintenance, things like that. The $1 million in capital around maintenance is more like structural.
Right.
Fixing the cross ties, fixing the bigger things that have gotten away from us.
Okay.
That we need to get back on track before we start, building new parks.
Right.
And that sort of thing. So,
Okay, thank you.
but that is in there in the capital side.
Anything else?
Just real quick, since, I appreciate you bringing that up, Councilwoman, is the indemnification contracts before using city facilities, we need to get those in place to protect us.
Especially since we're cutting our liability premium.
Yeah. And that's just a piece of paper that gives us some layer of protection. I was somewhere not long ago in another town just north of here, and before I could use the facilities, I had to sign something
Got it.
that said,
So for space rentals and.
just to step onto the property.
Wow.
If I tripped or fell, it was on me. And now, I don't know how that's tested, but something's better than nothing.
A little challenging for us, for all residents, but.
Well, I mean, like, no, hang on, when you go play golf,
Sure.
when you go play tennis, or, I mean, that might be a little difficult, but you know what I'm saying, when you visit someplace that,
Gotcha, for higher risk.
yeah.
The skate park.
Skate park, my goodness, we don't have one there?
Gotcha.
Use at your own risk, kind of. I know the city attorney's office
Some signage of it.
is working.
Some signage may at least be helpful.
I think there's a way to do it if you're using it. I mean, people that walk in the wild all the time have to sign a waiver before they've done anything, just to use it. So, I don't know, you can do it at pickleball
Yeah,
courts.
I've signed them all over
A
the,
retina scan when you go in.
or just scan that chip,
Yeah.
Jenny, that you have embedded.
Yeah, that chip, if everyone
Yeah.
just gets a chip,
Yeah.
and then you scan
Okay.
it, just as you walk through.
We are joking for those.
We
who
are
listening.
joking. We are not doing chips, yes.
But
That is
Over the news tomorrow.
I do see the liability concerns you're sharing, and so I think that's something we can take offline with city attorney and also our risk management area and see what are those highest risk activities and what are we doing to help
I've got, I have samples if you need them.
Your what?
Samples if you need them.
I can't.
Sample documents if you need them.
Oh, sample documents, yeah, sure. That's great.
All right, anything else on parks and outdoors? See, I have seen our esteemed head of early learning show up.
Bright,
Yeah.
bright as the sun.
Yeah,
Are we stopping at 3?
yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
yeah, we're gonna stop at 3 and take
I
a
have some
break.
calls to make.
Do you have a attorney-client today?
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. Do y'all
Okay,
wanna
then.
just do attorney-client right quick?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that. If we have attorney, we do have attorney-client, so as much as we adore you,
It's been great.
this has been great. We have to do it again sometime. How
How
about,
about next week?
Really like that outfit.
hey,
Yeah, right.
guys, you will get a whole new schedule from me and that's great. And next week, we will pick up with early learning, city planning, and we'll do just as we said we would rearrange. Thank you for your time and your effort. You're great to work with as usual. We're done.